welcome to the Wellness and Growth Journeys podcast. I am your host, Mia Lisa Garnes, the founder of the Wellness Growth Agency, where we focus on empowering women centered health and wellness businesses. And today, I am absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Jasmine Escalera. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You sure
Escalera?
did. Yeah.
Oh, yes. She is a reinvention coach. We can get into that because we want to know what that is. And a neuropharmacologist. Whew, that's a mouthful. And celebrated for empowering individuals to transform their lives. Now, she's the founder of the Courage Group. She combines scientific insight with spirituality to guide clients toward authentic, fulfilling lives. Welcome.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. This is really just such a pleasure to be able to talk about wellness and growth. Two of my two most favorite things, wellness and growth, taking care of yourself and always contemplating how can I be the best version of me.
Yes. So, Jasmine, what is a reinvention coach? And then, like, what made you get into being a reinvention coach? What is
You know,
it?
it's something that I came up with, honestly.
Oh, so it's you. It's penned by you.
Patented, created, trademarked by me. I've been a career coach predominantly for the vast majority of my business. So I started in career coaching really because being in STEM, being a Latina in STEM, it was very challenging to grow within my career. And I always felt like I was kind of getting the stiff hand. I was in toxic work environments, just in toxic competitive environments that really trashed my confidence. And that's what helped me kind of streamline or go into career coaching, was because I wanted to be able to really support women, predominantly women of color, into being able to elevate their confidence when it comes to their career so they could increase their visibility, their earning potential, their brand, and be able to have the career that they were going to enjoy. In the process of
Exactly.
just kind of living my own life, what I realized
Hmm.
was that some of my most beautiful transformations and life lessons always came from some kind of traumatic or turmoil event happening in my life and the reinvention of self that had to come from that. So
Kind of
when
like
I
a
really
phoenix.
I like that. So when I really thought about what's the evolution of my business and where do I want to take my business next, reinvention coaching was something that I really wanted to go into because it was just tapped into my story and my soul. And whenever I'm advising women in
Right.
their careers or in their business or just in their lives, it's all about connecting to self and connecting to your story and your journey to figure out what does fulfill me, what does excite me, and where do I want my life to go next. So reinvention coaching honestly was something that I wanted to do as the next phase of my business kind of grew, that was more connected to my own life journey and my own life story, and taking in and tying in the fact that our biggest lessons, our biggest transformations always come from these moments where we really have to show up for ourselves and prove
Right.
ourselves
Right.
and build that confidence and that courage.
I love that because for me, I don't know if anybody else goes through this in, life, but for me, I did come to a point in my life where I'm like, what is my purpose? What I want to do? What drives me? What motivates me? Like you kind of, I don't know if it's a midlife thing. Maybe it's a midlife thing where you're like, I've lived this much. Who knows how much longer I have to go? Like, let me do something in my life that really fills me, and it makes me feel purposeful.
Well, I think
Um,
there's a few things to mention about that. I love how you said, is this kind of like a midlife thing? I think in many ways it is, right? But I find that there's a real reason for reinvention or following your passion and purpose being something that you seek more in the stage of life that we're in. And some of the reasons I've kind of noticed, which have been applicable to me and the women that I worked with, is, oftentimes we're sort of given a blueprint of what success is and what success means. And that blueprint is what we are following for the first stage of our life, right? It's like someone told me that to be successful, I go to college, I get a job, I get a 401k. And so we're following that trajectory. And then traditionally, what happens is we get to a stage where we're like, okay, I did these things, but happiness, success, fulfillment, it doesn't feel like it's going to come from continuing to do this. So then that's when we decide to make the transition or the pivot. I also find that we often come to this space of wanting to reinvent or follow our passions or our purpose because we have laid the foundation of safety. So when you have the foundation of safety laid for you, meaning you have that income coming in, you feel more safe and secure, then you allow your mind to really be able to expand into what can I do to be more purposeful, more passionate about what I'm doing, because now you can be more
That's true.
creative and you can be more innovative.
Yes,
So I think
because you
these
don't
things
have to
just
worry about the
right. These things
money and
just
that kind of
naturally
thing. Yeah,
seem they naturally seem like they come from your midlife, but I don't think it's any kind of
right.
midlife crisis. I actually think that the truth bubble or what you thought was true just pops. Or you've done a
Right.
really great job. Kudos, pat yourself on the back. You've gotten yourself to a space where you can be more creative and more innovative and more playful in your life, which means you've laid a really good foundation for yourself.
Yes, yes. And you know what? That does resonate with me because my main goals, like you say, you finish school, but for me, I was like, I wanted to get to the pinnacle of my education, right? So, I was more hyper focused on getting that done. So, okay, getting my bachelor's and then getting my master's. I even thought about doing a PhD, but that, I wasn't really too kind of set on doing that, right? So then it's come back. Okay, I got my qualifications. What now? Well, I get a job, right? And a job that's paying me well and that kind of thing. So you do that, and then you're working for a little bit, and then as life goes on, you do other things. You get married or not, you have kids or not, but like you go through life, and then so you're checking off these boxes, like you're taught, oh, this is what you do. You go to school, and then you finish school, and you get a job, and then get a house, you get a car, you get the spouse, you get the kids. Checking off these boxes, right? And then in your mind, maybe you think this is the key to happiness, right? So you think, okay, well, maybe I'm not happy yet because I haven't been married yet, or maybe I'm not happy yet because I don't have any kids yet. So then that's like next on the list to check off. So then you do the things that you think, and that will make you happy. And then you realize that there's something still missing. Not that you're not happy with what you have, like, don't get me wrong, but like you think there's still like something hits you, like there's something missing still, and I'm not quite sure what it is. And you start hearing words like, well, I want to feel a little bit more fulfilled in life because yes, you have your different relationships with your friends, with your husband, with your kids, but then when it comes to yourself, no, like you know what is it, what's missing in there, what is that would give me like joy. um, so I do resonate with what you said because um, yeah, we do have like this checklist of things that we want to achieve in life, that we believe then would bring us some measure of happiness because that's what we're told, that's what we're taught, right? Um, so, I feel like, aha moment.
It can seem like you're having a midlife crisis, but it's just because you needed time to investigate, like, is what I've been told real? And you have to get that, you have to get the experience, right? And it takes some time to get that experience. Or you just create foundational safety for yourself, and now you have the capacity to explore. I find that those are two of the major reasons why people can sometimes get to a stage of reinvention at a certain point.
Right, right. I had just on a side note, conversation with my mentor, and he makes like 6, 7 figures a year, and he literally said that once he achieved that goal, right? Because now that's most people's goals now, to be financially free and kind of set up not only for themselves but for their their children and so on, right? So he was like, when once he achieved that, he also then hit a point where he was like, what no? What else do I do with my life? Because he then had his own little checklist. So maybe he had already accomplished all these things, a good paying job, wife, kids, that kind of stuff. But then his next goal then was, I need to make as much money as I can, or, so that my family is comfortable, that kind of thing. And then he also, at that point, right, still was like, okay, but I still need to do something that feeds my soul. I still need to do something that makes me excited.
I do think that the vast majority of people are really looking for a purpose filled life, but I think you can define what purpose means to you, right? And you can define what that is. I think we're always externally looking for purpose when purpose actually comes from the internal being. And I like to think of honestly everyone's purpose kind of being the same. That the idea is to listen to the internal self and to give that internal self the experiences that it is calling to have so that you can continue to decide what works for you, what doesn't work for you, learn your lessons, and then move to the next stage. So we all kind of essentially do have the same purpose in that we need to be tapping into self. We need to be understanding what it is that we want to experience, feel, what are our internal desires, and we need to not allow for fear to stop us from really being able to live out those desires and gain the experiences, because oftentimes we will follow that internal self and learn what it is that we want next through saying like that wasn't it instead of that was.
Because I got to experience it first, right? Because I'm like, I hear you. I hear you, but let me experience it, and then I will tell you if, like, yeah, making seven figures really. Well, let me experience it first, and then I'll tell you. I'll tell you, right? but I guess following from that, then reinvention often requires overcoming, your deep-seated fears and resistance. So, what are some common barriers your clients face, and how do you guide them through these challenges?
Yeah. So I think one of the most common barriers towards reinvention is not listening to yourself. So I find that we often get the calling to change, to transform, to live a more fulfilled life through, and people will kind of always describe it the same way. Like, I feel like there's more out there for me. There's this feeling of more. So I think the first barrier to overcome is really the challenge of listening to yourself. And oftentimes we get that calling, we get that drive, that internal knowing. And because of just, fear or expectations from others or priorities, we sort of like layer on all of these things such that the voice just gets lower and lower and lower. And so the number one thing that I think is really important is for you to hear that voice or hear that calling and then to inquire within it. So, what would more really look like for you? What's one experience that you would really like to have that would kind of define that more for you? What is something you feel you need to change or something you really would love to acquire in this next 1 or 2 years? You don't even have to think about it as a lifetime. But so it's tapping into that, listening to that, and not allowing fear, other priorities, the expectation of others to just automatically shut it down, because that's oftentimes what happens. Now, when women really do tap into that voice, start listening to that voice and actioning on that voice, a lot of times what can come up is imposter syndrome, self doubt, also feelings of worthiness.
All of
Worthiness,
that.
yeah, worthiness is a
Yes.
big one. Like
Yes.
women can often feel like I'm not worthy of having this
Yes.
life that I want to create for myself. Not
Yes.
understanding one's true value. So, not really being connected to your own value. That's another big one, especially for women in career, wanting to get the promotion, wanting to get the pay raise, but not really understanding or connecting to their own value so much so that they can project it outwards. So, foundationally, a lot of mindset things will come up for women who want to reinvent. And it's all geared
Yes.
towards fear around, your own sense of worthiness, how people are going to judge you, the expectations of others. We hold so much of that. And those can all be
It's true.
tremendous barriers towards moving forward.
It's true. I mean, as you were speaking, I'm pretty much saying, yeah, yep, definitely that, definitely that. Because I actually had a life coach the beginning of this year, and she helped me through, all these limiting beliefs that all these fears and all these really bad negative beliefs that we have about ourselves, that we hold there, that really stops us from doing the things that we want to do. Um, so that was the first thing that came to mind. The second thing that came to mind is that when I quit my job, and I was like, well, I'm going to do my own thing, starting my agency and that kind of thing. Um, Women that I told, coworkers and friends that I told, they were happy for me, but then they were also motivated and inspired, right? And some of them actually started to share like what their ultimate dream, to do in life would be. And I remember very vividly, a coworker, she was telling me, that she wanted to open an orphanage, and because she loves kids and that kind of thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would love that for you. I would love for you to achieve that dream, right? But majority of them are stop right there, like to just share it, and but then they keep the job, and I know that it does take a lot of courage to make, those kind of steps. So I don't want to like say, well, that's sad, but it is, because I do want everybody to fulfill, their dreams. Um, but I do acknowledge that is a big hurdle for some people to overcome, to get to step up to, like, people say step out, launch into all the kind of fancy words that people say, really to just kind of make a decision about your life.
When undergoing reinvention, one of the biggest things that I try to do with my clients is understand where everyone's unique story and where they're at, right? It can be a part of reinventing one's life is prioritizing the fact that you get to have the life that you want, right? So making that a priority for you. And based off of everyone's individual life and circumstances, how much you can prioritize yourself changes, right? I prioritize myself 100%, but that's because I'm a single woman with, I have my dog who is a priority to me, but I do not have any children, right? So when we talk about moms, right, you're in a stage of life where there is a little human, or maybe even multiple little humans who depend on you. And so how you prioritize your reinvention and what that really looks like in the context of your life and your obligations and responsibilities, it just looks different depending on what stage you're in, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you have to adapt that goal, or adapt that progress, or adapt that reinvention to fit into the context of where you are. So I always say to everyone, you can reinvent your life no matter what responsibilities and priorities you have. It just has to look maybe potentially different now than 10 years from now when you undergo a new reinvention and there's less of those priorities and expectations on you. So it's essential that we always tell ourselves that we are capable of doing it, but we also be realistic about what does that look like, so that I can obtain success in this area, in this reinvention, and not feel as though I'm giving up on myself. Like I can actually prioritize me.
I agree, because as you were speaking, I was thinking about a doctor visit I had years ago, because I was never home. I was always studying, traveling, something. I was a jet setter, and I remember I went to a doctor, and it was a checkup that I had to do before I left. I can't remember what it was for. I think it was like a physical or something, and it was like, yeah, I'm out again. I'm going, to another country to live and work. And she said to me, and not that it didn't come over as facetious, but thinking about it, I was like, So she said, "Oh, wait till you have kids. It's like, once you have kids, you're not gonna go anywhere. You're not gonna want to go anywhere. You're not gonna want to leave." And I was like, no, lady, no,
Mhm.
you will not put that on me, right? Now, of course, COVID came and just like done up everybody traveling and that kind of thing. Um, but I was sharing this story with my husband now, and we were talking about House Hunters International. I don't know if you ever watched House Hunters International.
I haven't watched it, but I know of the show. Yeah.
Right, on HGTV. It's no promotion, but if you guys want to sponsor, I'm up. And
Mhm.
if you ever watch any of these episodes, right? There would be like single people, married people. There would be like couples with a bunch of kids. There
Mhm.
was one that I watched, and it was like a blended family. So they had like 5 kids, something like that, and they up to move to a whole other country, right?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
the kids were grown,
I think
and
that
they were like, well, they'll get new friends. We got them in a
yeah.
great school, and it was no problem. You get what I mean? And I was like, on one hand, I'm hearing from this doctor, oh, once you get kids, you can be grounded, pretty much is what she's saying. And then I seeing something else.
Well, I mean, I think it's important for all of us to understand that the messages that we hear from other people don't have to be truth. Like everyone else's story and everyone else's journey and everyone else's beliefs can be their own. What oftentimes happens is that someone's beliefs get put, I like to kind of say like somebody shits on my lawn and then I have to like clean it up. But you could just put a fence around your lawn and then nobody would shit on it, right? So it's a matter of like you being able to say, I don't have to believe the messages that I hear. I choose to believe something different. So it's very important that, if you want to have a different life, that you choose to have a different life. Now, does that mean that adding 5 mini humans to your life makes traveling more difficult? Of course it does, right? Like it makes it more difficult, but it doesn't make it impossible. So it's just a matter of like how do you choose to live your life? And I don't think that we give enough thought to that we let other people's thoughts, ideas, concepts kind of infiltrate our mind. But if you want to have children and not travel, and that's how you want to live your life, then you have chosen to do that. But you don't get to tell other people because you made a conscious choice that you don't want to do it, that it's impossible for them. That's just your conscious choice.
Kind of, I guess, projecting her life and, yeah, like her thoughts and whatever, because I think she was saying, that she liked to travel when she was younger, but then all that stopped when she got her daughter, I think it was. And I'm like, I hear you ish. And clearly I still remember it because, I mean, she was my doctor, right? I went to her for like everything. So um yeah, I would listen to what she had to say, of course. But yeah, it definitely stuck with me as like, okay, this negative thing is gonna happen once I have kids. I can never travel again, and you know what I mean. So yes, I do agree with you. You do have to try to protect yourself with what the thoughts that people project on you, and then that you kind of take in, and it stays there, and then it shows up when you least expect it. And it probably is also a part of that list of limiting beliefs, right? That you think about yourself. Um, so then when you actually do some introspection, you realize, oh, I remember that's why I feel like now that, I have a child, I can't do anything anymore because, there's this societal expectation that once you have a kid, like ball and chain, oh, ball and chain, you can no longer have a life, you can no longer do the things that you love, that kind of thing. So thank you for your thoughts on that. So can you describe like a transformational moment or breakthrough that one of your clients experienced through your coaching, that really exemplifies the power of your approach?
Yeah, so oh my gosh, there's so many big major transformations. I think the transformations that I find to be the most exciting are those moments where clients understand more of why they act a certain way in this world, and what the drivers are for the actions that they take. So, oftentimes we are doing things because we're just doing it on default. Like, this is just how I act. This is just how I behave. But every single one of those actions that you take, or inactions, the things you don't do, are derivative of some internal thought process or some internal belief system that you created or that was created for you. So the biggest transformations are always those moments where women come to me and they say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that in my job search," this recently happened. I didn't realize that in my job search, I wasn't going for director level roles. Even though I have the experience for director level roles, I wasn't even applying for them. I was self selecting, and I was just saying, no, those are not possibilities for me, because I was in a traumatic work environment for years. And my confidence became so destroyed from being in this environment that subconsciously I sort of created this thought loop of, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, right? Because those environments taught me that. And so therefore, in my job search, I wasn't looking for the right kinds of positions. Now, what happens if you actually have director level experience and you're applying to manager level roles? You're confusing the hell out of hiring managers because they see you as a director, but you don't believe in yourself in that capacity. And so she was in the job search for months, not getting any leads, not getting any interviews. And this kind of aha moment was really transformative for her to really start looking at herself in a different way, projecting her brand in a different way, going for the right kinds of positions and roles so that now she feels more empowered in that job search, simultaneous to healing that feeling of lack of confidence, because you don't then want to go into the next position feeling that way. So it's really,
Exactly.
those are the most amazing transformations to me, right? So I tell people very
Right.
often that, like, getting the money, getting the home, getting the car, getting the title, starting the business, those are all byproducts. The real transformation and reinvention is understanding yourself, being connected to yourself, and every single day working towards being the best version of yourself. That's the real transformation. All of the other things are outcomes or byproducts of that.
I love that. We're gonna clip that one. Love that.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going marketing hat on.
I like that. No, that is a clippable moment for sure. Yeah.
Now, in your workshops and coaching sessions, now you
Mhm.
emphasize the importance of spirituality,
Yeah.
right, in personal growth. So, how do
Mhm.
you balance this with the practical aspects of career advancement?
It's such a great question. And I'm going to be honest and say that I did not become spiritual until much
Hmm.
later in my life. So I'm a trained neuropharmacologist, I'm a trained neuroscientist. I did biochemistry as a bachelor's degree. I was very science oriented for the vast majority of my adult life. When I went through my divorce, and simultaneous to me going through my divorce, I was in these toxic work environments. So I had the title, I had the pay, but I still felt miserable. I started to
Oh, wow.
see that all of these constructs that everyone told me, like, if you get married, if you have the job, if you get the director level, if you go to college, you're gonna be happy, you're gonna be fulfilled. When I started to realize that
Right.
all of these constructs were actually lies, and, like, it didn't
Yes.
work for me, that was when everything just kind of got stripped down to the core. And I really had to then decide, like, well, what does fulfillment mean to me? And I wasn't a
Hmm.
child, I didn't have parents to, guide me in that journey. This was now my journey to take on. So that was when I had to find something outside of myself to lean onto, because everything was just, I didn't even know who I was. Everything was starting to crumble. So that's where the spirituality started to take hold, right? Where I started to become more spiritual. But the blessing in disguise, because when I stepped into coaching, I was like, well, look at this. I spent all this time getting my PhD in neuropharmacology and, neuroscience. And here I am, not using a damn lick of it. But the funny part of it all was that when I started to get deeper and deeper into spirituality, what actually helped me
Right.
to become a true believer of something outside of myself and a true believer of the fact that I could create the life that I wanted was to use neuroscience, was to really understand that the
Hmm.
principles that I was learning in neuroscience, like neuroplasticity, the fact that you can change your brain through rewiring your thoughts, right? Which is a concept that we talk a
Right.
lot about in spirituality and in mindset work. Well, that's based in actual science. So the funny joke of this all was I think that, the universe, who I very much believe in, spirit, who I very much believe in, I think they guided me in the journey to, give me the scientific background so that I could become a much more powerful believer and a better teacher of these principles. So, it's kind of interesting that like spirituality for me is very important, but it's important for me that I teach it in a way where you understand that it isn't just about believing in something outside of yourself that you can't see. It isn't just about believing in yourself so much that you tell yourself you're the bomb every day. But it really is that there are things that go on in your body biologically that help you to increase that kind of spiritual perspective and really connect to that spirituality in a different way. So it's very important to kind of blend the two for me. And I think that people learn it and understand it more. But I think that when you do have that blending, you just naturally can understand the strategies better, right? And I do think that foundationally, you have to have the right mindset, right? It's all you need to do is go on Google and what not even all you need to do is ask ChatGPT, how do I get a promotion? And it's going to write out list by list every single thing that you need to do. Now, the problem here is just as I said, we can get a prescription for how we live our lives and it doesn't work. You can get a prescription for how you ask for a promotion and it won't work. What's the similarity in the two? You. So you have to be the one that really sits there and asks yourself, do I believe that this is possible for me? What do I think about myself in regards to the situation? Mindset has to be the foundational perspective. You can get a prescription for how to do something, strategy, but you will not implement that successfully if your mind isn't right around it.
Interesting. I love that. And I do realize that mindset is a big role that you need to tackle. I feel like for everything and anything. um, because as I mentioned, I did have a mentor, and a part of the mentorship was a kind of mindset thing. And even with life coaching, I mean, it wasn't called mindset, but it really um, um, dealt with your thoughts and what you thought about yourself, and then trying to rewire those thoughts into more positive things, um, or challenging your negative thoughts that you have about yourself. And I think my coach, she said, putting them on trial to
Yeah,
see if they're
absolutely.
actually true
True. Yeah.
or
Are
not.
they
So
valid or are
the
they
mental
not?
side.
Or yeah, is this your trash talking that's happening right now? Absolutely, those are so
Yes.
important.
Yes, yes. So the mental side of things, and it's interesting to hear you from your experience and your studies, to say that, hey, look, you can actually rewire your brain to think differently. And that's actually kind of cool. We actually have a lot of power in our mind.
It's really cool, and neuroplasticity was something that came up a little bit before I did in graduate school. But yeah, these are all amazing principles and great things that so many spiritual practitioners are teaching now, which is great because I love the fact that we can blend these two worlds together because oftentimes, I didn't think I could be spiritual because I was a scientist. And now I call myself a spiritual neuroscientist. Like, I believe in the science of spirituality. And I believe that spirituality is backed by science. And I think those two can crosstalk. So I think it's essential that, we teach the way people learn. And so if someone needs to have that anchor in like, is this really real? You have that anchor point to be able to say, well, yes, in fact, it is.
Spirituality, I think, is a huge topic and means something different perhaps to everybody. Um, uh, for me, right, the fact that we live on a ball in the middle of space, I just,
Right. Like, doesn't that mean something on its own, you know?
I'm just gonna leave that there. I'll just, if you think about it, it's just a ball, in the middle of space. I'm just gonna leave it.
No, it's totally true to think of it from that perspective. I mean, how could we not think that there's something more outside of ourselves when that's actually, yeah, the case? So totally, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, so one of the things that I realized when I was going through one of my, I feel like I've gone through four different reinventions in my life, and actually in the Courage Crew premiere, which is the next step version of the Courage Crew, I created this masterclass of all of the different reinventions I've gone through and the biggest lessons that I've learned. And when I was contemplating, I was living in Brooklyn, my hometown, and I had gone through already a lot of transformation, and I felt like I needed to leave. I felt like I needed to disconnect from a lot of individuals. I needed to leave Brooklyn. I needed to go someplace else in order for me to be able to really solidify the healing. And I didn't know where that place was going to be. It turned out that I ended up moving to Miami, where I am currently. But what I realized when I was going through that process was that every stage of growth that you go through has a complementary stage of grief where you are growing into this next level version of yourself, but you're almost kind of like shedding people, things, situations, environments that no longer are in service of that version of you. Now, it doesn't mean that you drop all of those people or things and you walk away. Sometimes it does, but sometimes the relationships just need to transform in order for you to really take yourself to this next level. And so there's this moment where I felt like I was alone, like I felt like I had not yet found my people who were also undergoing a similar transformation. And it was one of the most lonely experiences of my life. Like, I just remember feeling so alone, but also excited because I knew that something was coming. I knew that growth was coming out of this process. So, the reason why I started the Courage Crew, which is a free online community for women who are ready to undergo change, ready to undergo reinvention, is because I didn't ever want for any woman who was going through this process, who was going through this developmental stage, to feel that sense of grief and to feel alone going through it. So I really wanted to create a space where women could transform, start their reinvention together, and support one another through it. I also think that validation for me, when I was going through a toxic work environment, I secluded myself because I thought, like, this is all about me, right? Like, this, I'm the only
Right,
person
right.
that's going through this.
We
And when
think
I
that, don't we?
finally
Yes. Hmm.
yeah, when I finally broke out of my shell and started talking to people about what I was experiencing, I realized that so many more women were going through this. And so that validation was incredibly transformative because it meant that I wasn't alone, that there were other people, that, you know, it wasn't like a me thing, that like I could fight this because there was a fight to be fought, you know? So it was a different kind of energy that I came at it when I got that form of validation. So a lot of what I see in the Courage Crew with these women who are undergoing transformation, who are going through our 30-day Kickstart Your Reinvention challenge together, is that they start to see like, oh my gosh, like you're doing it, you're transforming, but also we have similar goals and outcomes and stories. It makes them feel like this is more possible for them, and they don't feel like they're going through it alone. So I started the Courage Crew, which is the free online, the only free online version of a community for women reinventors. I started that free community in July. And since then, we've run two challenges. We're in the course of our second one, and there are so many women who did the August version of our challenge, transformed tremendously, and are now like, I want to do this again because it was just so amazing. It was so great,
Nice.
and I want to support others. And I need, it's almost kind of like they need that, you know, supportive system now because it just feels so good to not do it alone. So yeah, I absolutely love doing it. You know, it's taught me so much about myself and my story, and it's just so incredibly fun to see the women going through transformation and like the power that they have behind them.
Listen, I feel like everything you say, I'm like, yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Um, because, but you know, obviously different because for me, it was me being pregnant and giving birth during COVID, right? And feeling not having the village, not having the support, and feeling, yeah, quite lonely in this new motherhood type of situation, right? So then I turned to a few communities on like Facebook, and there's one called What to Expect. And it was so good because then like the moms would ask questions, and then you know other moms would comment on it and that kind of stuff, right? So like I was like, oh, it's not only me, you know, I'm sorry, my 3-year-old, it's not only me, you know, I, you know, other moms are going through um the same kind of thought processes, and it does give you, for me it gave me that kind of comfort that yes, it's not only me, it's not only in my head, other women are going through it, and we're going to go through it together, and we're going to share our stories together, and we're going to, whenever we're going through difficulties, somebody's going to come in and be like, hey, look, I tried this worked, maybe you could try this as well. And you know, so maybe we just meant to be in a community. Maybe that's just how we meant to be. Because as you talk about your Courage Q community, it reminded me, right?
It's absolutely how we're supposed to be. I don't think that we're supposed to be siloed individuals living in, you know, just in partnership and, you know, raising our children siloed. I don't think that that's the way that we're supposed to be doing this. I just think that that's how society has evolved. But if you go back to biology, we always existed in tribes, we always existed in community, and so many individuals still live in that capacity and live that way and thrive that way. So I do think we were meant to be more in community. I think that things have just transformed, but I do believe that we can get back to that. And even though the online space is not the space I would say to build your community in and to just stay in this online space, it is amazing to see women come together in the Courage Crew, which is an online community, but to also see them connect with each other if they're in the same cities. So that's happened a few times where they've started on the online space, and because they know they're in the same city, they connected in person. So I do think that like these kinds of environments, these kinds of online environments can spark you meeting people that you would have never met and having conversations that you could have potentially never had. But we don't want to stay in this space. We really do want to build that community in real life, because that communal experience is brilliant and beautiful. I've seen it online, but when you take it into the real world, I think that it create something very different where we start to resonate with each other, right? Biologically resonate with each other. Our minds start to connect with each other in a different way. And that sort of transformation that you can create together is really powerful.
I believe so too. I believe so too. We do have to transition off of the online. You're right. I think we are finding a lot of comfort with the online because we don't have to get ready and leave the house, right? I
Yeah,
think that
I mean it's amazing. It's great for just kind of hanging around and putting on a nice top, but Lululemon bottoms, and it's great.
okay. So now for our listeners who many of them are women, 35 and over, and they're looking hopefully or they have thoughts of reinventing themselves or maybe finding like a deeper purpose, right? Especially when it comes to their careers, right? What practical steps can they start with today to initiate their own transformation?
Yeah, so I think the number one step is if you feel as though reinvention is a calling for you right now, amazing. You've already hit the big hurdle, right? Which is many times we know that yeah, many times we know that transformation is something that we would like to do, but we're not listening to that internal voice, as I mentioned before. So if you're ready, you're activated. So what I would say is to ask yourself, I mean, this is all about self-reflection and self-awareness to begin with, is to ask yourself, if life could be different in the next 1 to 3 years, like if I could really have a different version of my life, what would that really look like? And sometimes people can get very overwhelmed because the point to where you want to be and the point to where you are might feel like a big gap. You might kind of think that, oh, I have to change my money. I have to change my career. I want to start that side business. I want to find my partner, the love of my life. There could be all of these different pieces meshed in there. And what I really tell individuals is you just have to start with one anchor point, right? One anchor point, such that when you start to dig in on working on your worth and value in that anchor point, on building your confidence, on taking action towards reinventing that area, there's just naturally a ripple effect that happens. So, for example, you want to build wealth, you want to have financial stability and independence. Well, you're probably going to have to focus on your career. You're probably going to have to focus on owning your
Exactly.
value, asking for a pay raise, getting that promotion so that you have more of a cushion to create savings, to create investments, to create wealth. So it's essential for you to really be able to, say to yourself, I'm going to focus on this anchor point, because this anchor point is then going to be able to have that spillover effect where if I got this right, a lot of other components are going to change. If you see your worth and value in your career, your relationships are naturally going to change because your worth and value doesn't just shut off when you leave your 9 to 5. You're owning that in all different spaces. So, that's the thing that you want to really understand, is that you can have an anchor area so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming and you're focusing on one point, knowing that that transformation that's going to happen happens within. It's you that transforms. So you naturally transform other areas of your life. And then you get to that point where you can say, okay, now that I've achieved this part of my reinvention goal, where do I see that next phase going? And is there anything that has changed, right? So it's all about really that
Right.
reflection, that internal reflection,
Yeah.
that anchoring in of where am I going to focus, my efforts, my internal work, my actions, where am I going to focus on creating these new habits that are going to be the foundation for success in this transformation. And then, understanding that everything else will start to fall into place as you kind of take these actions.
You were talking, and I was remembering that movie Failure to Launch, because I think that one making the step, the first step, like you said, thinking that okay, well, I need to do reinvention of my life is a big one. But then the next one is actually making that first step to make any real change. I think that's a big one. But I do congratulate people for even thinking that they want to reinvent their lives and then actually making that first step, whether it be like, maybe taking on some extra courses or, doing a little exercise or anything, maybe even going for a healthier diet. Like I love like these, making these little steps for something that um, want to achieve in your life overall. So tell me, okay, what unique a unique service like reinvention coaching can be challenging. What strategies have you found effective in reaching and engaging your target audience?
Yeah, so I think the strategies to market anything are always going to be very similar, right? You have to understand who your clientele is that you're marketing to. You have to understand what are their specific challenges that are facing, how would they describe their specific challenges, and what the potential outcome is that they want to create. Now, I had mentioned before that the byproducts of reinvention are the houses, the money, but that's really what people are seeking and looking for. They don't know that deep internally there's going to be a lot of growth that's going to happen, and those are essentially going to be byproducts. But when you're marketing towards what the person really perceives they want their outcome to be. I think for anything, for me, marketing also is about storytelling. So I share a lot of my own individual story as a way to be able to connect with individuals to say, like, I've gone through this as well, right? So reinvention can be challenging, and I know that it can be challenging. I've gone through it, but here are some of the things you want to look out for. So it's, for me, marketing is always about understanding who your person is, getting very clear on how they describe where they are and where they want to go, and implementing or integrating your own story into that process such that the person almost gets to the point to feel of like, wow, I feel like this person's in my head. Like I feel like when I read their material, they're talking to me.
Yes, just like how we kind of resonate with each other through this conversation. Um, and that is something I believe in my marketing as well. So thank you for that. And thank you for such a great, amazing discussion. I feel like we covered so many topics, and I love your background in science, how it links to spirituality, and then just reinvention and how, we could, try to reinvent ourselves or take these steps to reinvent ourselves and finding purpose in life, and not looking at the boxes that you tick off, but really looking like within to find something that is more purposeful, purpose filled, when it comes to just living on the ball in the middle of space. But thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And I had such a great time chatting with you. And for anyone who's interested in joining the Courage Crew, definitely check us out because reinvention is happening on a daily basis there. And we would love to be able to be a part of your journey and a part of your process.
Yes, and I'll put the links on here and in the description so people will be able to find you.
Yay.
Thank you for joining us on another Wellness and Growth Journeys podcast. Now, if you're inspired to elevate your health and wellness business, the Wellness Growth Agency is here to guide you. We specialize in tailored digital marketing strategies to enhance your client engagement, grow your practice, and improve overall satisfaction. Let's unlock the potential of your business together. Visit us at wellnessgrowthagency.com to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insightful episodes. Until next time, keep thriving and remember, wellness is a journey. Growth is the destination.